Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to step you through the process of doing UV layouts for your label using Maya 2018. So this is an update to the previous one I did. I think I used Maya 2015 or 16 for that video. So in 2018, actually in 2017 they came out with this UV toolkit. Also this Workspace allows us to have a UV workspace editing space to work within. So if you're currently on Maya Classic, which is probably what you use to model in, you can go ahead and switch over to UV editing. It's going to give you two panels side by side. You probably don't have this open, so it probably looks like that. Go ahead and open up your outliner. You usually want to have that open, especially for modeling. And you've got your tabs over here for the UV toolkit, tool settings, and your attribute editor. Okay, so I'm just going back to the UV toolkit right now. And this is what it looks like after you get the UVs all done. So this is what we're shooting for. We want to see everything nice and uniform. So this checkerboard looks very much like the checkerboard up here. And there should be a uniform shape to these all the way across. Okay, so prior to doing this, it looked much messier. And let me see if I saved anything off here. I didn't. So this is actually what a polygon will look like before the UVs are done. So the label looked something like this down here, so you can see lots of stretching. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the label, and what I'm going to do is just step you through the process starting from the beginning here. So with mine, I just have the single polyplane right here, so I didn't do the extrude on it. If you did do the extrude, you may want to go back and just select the faces on here and duplicate them. Okay. Alright, so what I'm going to do is select projection. So under my poly modeling shelf right here, these are the different shortcuts for ways in which you can do UV projections. So you've got planar mapping here, so this is for a flat plane. Okay, cylindrical, which is what we're going to use. We've got something close to a cylinder here with some curvature to it. We've got a sphere. We could probably even do this. I mean, we're sort of starting to wrap around and get sort of a sphere shape right here. I'm going to go ahead and just stick with a cylinder here. We've got something called automatic right here. It doesn't do everything for you. It's not that kind of automatic. It just breaks the shells up usually into 6 different projections. So let's just go ahead and start off with a cylinder. Okay. And so this is what it's going to look like the first time it comes out. So I'm going to turn off the checkerboard right here. And we can see it's kind of condensed. It's not as long as this is here on the model. So it's sort of compressed along the x-axis. And this little cage that you're seeing around here, this is what's creating the projection right here. So this is a GUI, and it has some different controllers on it. You can control it by coming down here and clicking on this, and then that activates move, scale, and rotate. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to click off of that, so this goes back to just the GUI right here, is come over to the attribute editor, and with this selected you should see a projection attributes tab right here, and for projection center there's X, Y, and Z. Okay, so it sort of is dependent upon how you created your labels. So if you were in a side view when you selected your labels, that selected them along the front, which is along the Z-axis. This is our Z-axis right here. And if I come over here, what I want to do is start correcting some of the stretching here. So if we look at the stretching, It's definitely condensed, so we're not seeing squares, but we're also seeing them pinching more down here, stretching more here in the middle, and then they look okay right here, and then we're getting more stretching as we're going to the side. It gets much worse. So you can see how it's really stretching over here on the side, and again over here on this side. So a lot of that has to do with the placement of this GUI here. So we want to push this up to the edge of the bottle. So if we come over here and we just type a 0 in here and hit enter, that's going to correct a lot of it. So they're looking more consistent. There's still some stretching happening up and down because the bottle is, or the label's curving under, and then it kind of bulges out here and then it curves up in that direction. So we're trying to take this 3D model over here and create a 2D projection off of it. So you can kind of think of a cardboard box, or in this case like a cylinder, and you're cutting it open and flattening it out. So that's what we're doing here. We're trying to flatten everything out here and make it all look nice and uniform. Okay, so that's sort of the first step right here, is pushing that coordinate in. And you can look down here and see the direction. So I knew that I was along the x-axis, if you, or sorry, the z-axis. So if yours is along the x, you're going to want to come over here and push this in. Okay. All right, so let's come out over here and start correcting the shape of it. So you'll notice that everything looks kind of stretched out. So we have to sort of do the opposite over here. I'm going to use the scale tool. It's a little easier. So move, scale, and rotate work in here. Okay, and I'm going to grab the x coordinate here. I'm going to start dragging it out. So the shape of this should, in general, look like the shape of your object in here. So as I start pulling this out, you'll see it's scaling, and these start to look more like uniform squares, checker box. Okay, so there's still some problems, especially down here. We see them starting to stretch more as it curves under, and then stretching more up here on the top. So that's about as far as we can go with just those basic tools of doing the projection and then pushing in the GUI and then scaling it out. Okay, so what we need to do now is called an unfold 3D. So we're going to do that on the UVs. What I'm going to do also is just kind of grab the center. So I'm still in scale. So we're going to scale uniformly in X and Y. Right here, we just want to scale it down, and I'm going to use the move tool and slide it over here. Okay, so this is called the 0 to 1 space. We've got 0, 0 right here, and then it goes out to 1 here and up to 1 here. Okay, so we've got U's running in this direction, U's running in this direction, and V's running in this direction. Alright, so to begin working on this and doing the unfold for the 3D unfold, we want to select the UVs. So right now we've got faces selected. So we want to switch over to UV. So I'm just right mouse clicking over this. I get a marking menu, and I want to come over here and select UV. Okay, and then you'll see they'll highlight as red. And if I come over to one of these intersections where it highlights red and I double click, that's going to select all the UVs for this particular shell. Okay, and the UVs sit right on top of the vertices, but they don't change the geometry, so they're just creating a 2D texture. So if I grab one of these vertices here, I've got the move tool, and I pull it around, you'll notice that it's just stretching and changing the 2D image on there, the texture. It's not changing the shape of the model. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to double click again. I want to have all of those selected, and I'm going to come over here and hold down Shift, right mouse click, and I get another marking menu. And let me come back to the center here. So I'm looking for Unfold, which is right here. And once I click over that, it brings up another sub menu, and I've got Unfold along UV, Unfold, and then Unfold along Y. So I want unfold, but I want this option box right here. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to open up the window. I want to make sure that I'm just going to reset it here. So this is probably what yours looks like. We want to use Unfold 3D. And we're going to use pack. So it's going to pack it into this 0 to 1 space right here. Okay, so I'm just going to hit apply. And for some reason it looks like it flipped it upside down. So a lot of times what I'll do is come over here and I'll select a corner, and then I'll come out here, and it did flip it. So I'm not exactly sure why it did that. So we just need to flip it over here. So I'm going to double click on this. So I want to make sure I've got the whole shell selected, the UVs, and coming over to transform. And yours may or may not have done that. They kind of do their own thing every time you do UVs. So down here under tools, we can rotate it around, scale. What I'm looking for is flip. So I think we're flipping along U here. Let's do that. That looks better. And then I'm going to select this little corner, and I see that it's in the correct direction here. So I've got the top corner right here selected, and I'm seeing it over here in the top. Okay, so if I had left it that way and I went ahead and did my graphics and put text on here inside of Photoshop and then saved that out and brought it in and attached it, it would have had everything flipped backwards. Okay, so we want to make sure this is oriented in the right direction, that up is up and we've got our left and right figured out. Okay, so that looks good. And now when I come in here and I start looking at these, there's a tiny bit of stretching happening, maybe here in the center. But for the most part, I think this is pretty acceptable. If I double click on this, I can move this up over this text right here. I want to scale it down a little bit, and I want to scale uniformly. So once you get your shape and the UVs projected correctly, you don't want to come in here and do this and stretch it, because it's going to mess everything up. So you want to always scale uniformly. Okay, so I'm just scaling it down enough that it's inside the 0 to 1 space. We don't want to have it overlapping. Okay, and you'll know it's overlapping if you have your texture on. It will overlap. You'll see these the texture spilling over into these other areas right here. Okay, so just scaling it back down like that. Okay, I can also come over here and hit 7 on my keyboard. So 7 will show stretching, and I'm not seeing anything here. It's pretty solid white color, which is what we're after. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and hit 7 again and get out of that. That goes back to texture, and that is pretty much it. And for the thickness on here now, I'm just going to go ahead and shut this off. I'm going to save my scene. Okay, and I'm going to come back over here and go to object mode, and let's go ahead and just do the UV snapshot first before we create the thickness on here. Okay, so I'm going to come under here and select image. All the way down here there's snapshot. Okay, that brings up this little box, and first off, the location. So we want to make sure it's going into the proper directory, so you can hit browse and navigate out to your folder that you're working with. So mine's in Documents, Maya, Projects, and UV Demo. And I didn't make a full-blown directory here, so I've just kind of got these guys floating out here. I'm going to just make a new folder in here and call it Source Images. Typically it likes to save this into the images, but since we're going to be working inside of Photoshop with this, I'm just going to create a Source Images and drop it in there. Okay, if it's dropping it into your images directory, that's actually correct as far as where it should be placed. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and call this UV label and save. So now that should be set up. You'll see that in there. And image format, we want to go with a JPEG. And I don't think I need a 2K. It's 2048, so I'm just going to go down to 1024. That is a 1K. And as soon as you hit tab, it will put the other one in there. The aspect ratio is always locked, and these are always the same, and they're always square. Okay, everything else should be fine on here, so I'm just going to say apply and close, and you'll see that it wrote it out right there. And then coming back here to my label, I'm actually going to just scale this out a little bit. Okay, so I want this to be on the outside, maybe not that far. Okay, so I just did 0.005, which should be fine, and then I'm going to hit extrude and do the local translate Z, other direction, and I've got keep faces together, needs to go on. Okay, so all this did was create a little thickness, probably too much. That's sort of pushing into the bottle right now. So 0.01, I think we'll fix that gap there. No, it's still got a little gap. Alright, so 0.05 pushes it in there. Okay, and Q to get out of that. Alright, and there's the label. And go ahead and follow the next video where I take the label into Photoshop and start designing it.